We could be down at the beach, but it's foggy, so you're here at the right spot. Okay. Got it going?
Okay. I was just waiting for the live.
Okay. So I'm doing this as a Facebook Live, so because there's some people that couldn't make it, so we're focused on me. You're not in it, but you know, unless you want to be, you can get up and jump around a little bit and get excited. But so anyway, what I basically I'm really glad you're here because you know I've been doing chiropractic for 30 years, and one thing that I noticed over the years is people don't necessarily get, you're fine, people don't necessarily get the same results as they have in the past. People would come in with some kind of neck pain, back pain, and we'd adjust them and they get well. And we've seen this throughout where my predecessors are saying that, you know, because of the toxic overload that we see in our environment, people are sicker than they ever used to be. You know, there's something like 82,000 chemicals that have been invented in the last 50 years. And those get dumped into our environment, and then our liver and kidney have to figure out how to get rid of that immediately. I mean, think of how amazing our body is, that, you know, some chemists can spend sometimes years making a chemical, put it in the environment, we consume it, and immediately our liver has to figure out how to get rid of it. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. So really one of the reasons that I got back into functional medicine, I used to do it years ago, but there was not as easy of a path to really help people get well, is that I really see the need for it. And also I found a thing that I think is amazing. Working with Dr. Pompa, he's just phenomenal, and what we found on the cellular detox level. So what it really comes down to is looking at why our bodies are not as healthy as they could be, and why sometimes some types of diets work and why they don't work, but how come we're seeing more and more disease in our country. The United States takes 70% of all of the drugs in the world, believe it or not, 70%. Dang. And we're only 4% of the population. Yeah. And we're still rated 50th in the world for health. So drugs are not necessarily fixing us, so we got to really talk about what was fixing us. So that's why I'm doing this workshop to try to help you guys, not just now, but you know, for the next several years of your life, however long that is, learning to be as healthy as we can. Does that make sense? Yeah, no? Okay, good. So, a lot of times people come in with any of these type of symptoms. You know, do you want to move over a little bit, Talia, so I'm not feeling like I'm blocking you all the way? You okay?
Oh, I think I'm good.
Okay. So, anyway, symptoms can come in any way, shape, or form. And that's one reason we have so many medications in the world right now. They're covering up each one of these symptoms, but they're not necessarily getting to the core of the problem. And so that's what we really want to try to talk about. And then when you look at the success rate of people getting healthy, it has to do on whether they take action on what works. I mean, you know, during the Revolutionary history, the other 96% sat on the fence to wait to see who was going to win. You know, so not crazy, and those 4% created our independence and made this nation that we have today. So I'm hoping that at the end of this, you have something to do. You'll take this step to improve your health some way, and I know some of you already have. So that's really awesome. Oops. So one of the main things that's causing disease and causing us not to move forward with our health is inflammation, and we're really going to talk about that today. Almost every magazine that you pick up that has a health-related topic to it talks about inflammation, whether it's at the cellular level or in the affecting the whole body. Inflammation is what's killing us. It's what's making us sick. It's what's causing chronic disease. So if we find how to decrease the inflammation in our body, we can actually find out how to make ourselves healthier again. So this is kind of a pretty graphic depiction of what happens when our body stops being able to detoxify itself. You know, basically we put foodstuffs in our body and they go through our stomach, through our small intestine, our large intestine, and then out. And we are supposed to absorb all these great nutrients in from those foods and eliminate all the bad stuff. Well, what we're finding is so many people have trouble with their digestive system, with their small or large intestine, that it can't allow you to digest good food or proper nutrients. And it actually has been damaged. The walls to our intestines have been damaged where actually larger particles get into our bloodstream than ever should have. It's like what we call inflammation, and then things like glyphosate and other chemicals are causing our digestive system to not function well. And when you think about it, 90% of our serotonin, you guys know what that is, our feel-good transmitters, is in our intestines. So if the things that are supposed to make us feel good in our intestines are being polluted and blunted by the toxins, how are we going to ever feel that serenity? So what we end up doing is our brain knows that there's something that makes it feel good, so our brain starts to shortcut and want sugar. The sugar also is the same thing. I mean, sugar makes you feel good. So our society, since World War II, we've been able to eat so many different types of food. We can get any food we want from any part of the world all day long, right? So we have gotten to a point where we can eat sugar all day long. And sugar is actually more addicting than heroin, they say, because the brain craves it. And you can get it so readily, putting sugar in the food to make it palatable. And it's kind of, you don't even realize, I want to go back because that tasted so good. Well, you're getting a cup load of sugar in it. So getting back to the serotonin levels, one thing, I'm actually writing a book. It's called The Story of Two Brains. You have a brain in your head and a brain in your gut. And the gut brain is taken over our life on many people so that we're afraid to not eat. We're afraid to be anywhere away from food because, oh my gosh, I'm going to start to crash. Well, who's doing that? This brain or this brain? So this brain is supposed to take us through life, and we're supposed to set dreams and goals with this brain, and then have our body work for us so we can carry out the functions of life. But as we start to get damage to our digestive system, then all of a sudden, this is owning us. I've got a condition of my digestive system that means that I'm being held back for my goals with this body and life. So we're going to try to talk about how to reverse this and get this thing under control so we can go live our dreams and goals. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. So this is just a depiction of a body gone completely toxic. This guy feels terrible, got all of these different pollutants and fast food, cigarettes, alcohol, glyphosate, industrial pollutants that our body is supposed to be able to dump easily. But what happens is our body gets overloaded. So there's three major toxins in our environment. Heavy metals like lead, mercury, sometimes cadmium, all these aluminum, various things that we get so many of those in our body because of foods we've eaten, injections that we've had, amalgam in our teeth, and believe it or not, 4 generations of our mother's toxins are dumped down through the fetal blood into us. So as mom is creating a little baby, her bones are being dissolved to make bones for the baby. Well, with that calcium comes the lead that she's been exposed to. This goes down 4 generations. So our great-great-grandmother has actually, if she worked in an area or lived in an area or with lead paint, which was everywhere back then, we're getting that lead paint, and our children are getting that lead paint from our mothers. So do you know what the first symptom of lead poisoning is? Anxiety. How many people have anxiety? How many kids have anxiety these days? Mercury also, anxiety, depression. And now they're getting this, 4 generations down, and then anything they're being exposed to in our environment today, including some of the things that are put in the vaccines. And I'm not saying I'm pro or con vaccines, but there's a lot of toxins in there that we should be concerned about being exposed to. So heavy metals are the key to getting your body healthy. Because when you have heavy metals in your body, and we now know that we get them from 4 generations down, they tend to love fat. And where's the most fat in our body? It's in our brain, right? So the heavy metals get into our brain, they get into our liver, they get into our kidneys, and other areas of the body. And what they do, they change the chemistry of our body so that mold can hide in there very well. So there's mold everywhere in our environment, okay? And in that mold, some of it's fine, but some of it is really, really terrible for you. And it has neurotoxins, meaning things that are toxic to your nervous system that can make you sick. These can cause all kinds of conditions like fibromyalgia, all these crazy diseases. And then glyphosate is, which is Roundup. This really should have said biotoxins, which are biochemicals, which are all of those chemicals I mentioned in our environment. So now, because of things like glyphosate, though, they blow our digestive system apart, so we get more and more toxins absorbed into our brain and vital organs. So this is just an example of glyphosate. I mean, it's sprayed. I on my way to work every morning, I go by a 100-year-old apple orchard that's sprayed with glyphosate. You can just see the lines of the dead grass, and that gets absorbed into the roots and into the fruit. And it's it's really deadly. And this is the mercury level. I mean, we know that mercury from the gold mine days is so extant in the ocean that we can't even eat fish. You know, you could, in some of the lakes in the Sierras, it says eat 1 fish a week if you're a woman within childbearing years, like, Lake Tahoe or Lake Almanor or any of those lakes, because of the amount of mercury in there. So where's this all going to end? I was at a seminar, Carol and I were at the World Cellular Healing Conference a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to Dr. Pampa and then one of the main chemists about why don't we come up with something we can spray on fish to pull the heavy metals out? Wouldn't that be cool? So they're working on it. It's a long way to get that. But, if we have some way to get the heavy metal out of the fish and the dioxins and everything else, maybe we'll have a chance to be able to eat healthy food without being afraid of it killing us. This is a box of waffles that I got when I was eating it. I was visiting my sister. And what's really interesting, I was reading all of the ingredients on here, talked about all of the good things or all of the things it didn't have in there. But what was important, it said no sewage sludge on fields. Where is it? No sewage sludge on fields. And I go, wow, I'd never heard that on a box before. What the heck? How come one box of something organic is saying no sewage sludge on fields and none other are? Well, so I'll leave that up to your vivid imagination, but if you go buy this stuff now, that line is now gone. So somehow they got pressured to take that line off of there. I don't know who possibly would have pressured them besides the Food and Drug Association or whatever. So we have to realize that the people that are taking care are supposed to be watching out for us on the foods we're putting in our body. They're maybe not doing a real good job. They're wanting to get our food source farther and farther away from where we live. And, as far as I'm concerned, I want to grow my own food and eat it and know what's put on it, because it's just gone pretty crazy. So this is the example of, they did this study group where it was checking the blood in the placenta of unborn babies. They found 278 chemicals in that blood of the unborn baby that was being transferred from the mother's blood into the baby. A lot of them were cancer causing or neurotoxins, and then again we know that 4 generations of lead comes down through there. So you wonder why one person on the planet can have a lot of problem with the environmental toxins and another person doesn't have any problem with it. Well, a lot of it has to do with what you came into this life with. And the studies show that usually the firstborn child gets the biggest amount of lead from their mother. I mean, that's because it's stored in your bones, lead and mercury. Mom's getting ready to make a new baby and dumps all that stuff, and the first dose goes to the firstborn child. Maybe not always, but now you put that together with some of the genetics that go along with that kid, and then what happens in this lifetime with the neurotoxins that are exposed to, and it's a formula for disaster. This is a example of a heavy metal urine test that we do. Sometimes people do like hair analyses or various other type of heavy metal tests, but the one that's most accurate is where you actually do a provoking agent. You take a substance prior to doing the test to help pull the heavy metals out of the cells in your body. Because, you know, if I had a pond in my backyard and on a nice clear spring day I was to scoop some of the water off the middle of the top, it would look pretty pristine. But if I were to stir up the mud on the bottom and then test that water, it'd probably be a whole different story. So when we want to find out what heavy metals are in your tissues that are affecting your health. And so this is showing the lead way high on this person, as well as thallium. Now thallium, I've had a couple patients with really high thallium, and we are trying to figure out where a lot of this comes from, and a lot of it comes from makeup. You know, the FDA doesn't have any laws or any regulations on what you put on your skin. Anything you put on your skin, they don't care about, as long as you don't put it in your body. Well, your skin is the biggest organ you have, and it absorbs in and out. So some of this thallium gets in there, and it can cause a lot of problems, you know, with your endocrine system, which is your you know, all of your hormones. So that's one of the tests, and that lets us know which direction to take to detoxify you. This is her aluminum is really low here, but or his. This is a male, but we get aluminum from a lot of the cooking from people that are chronically taking Tums. There's aluminum in the Tums. You know, if you just take a look at it, or Rolaids, so that aluminum gets absorbed in your body, and it basically has been linked. One of the links to Alzheimer's or you know, or dementia, because that stuff gets up into your brain and it doesn't conduct electricity. You ever tried to pick up some aluminum with a magnet? So it gets into your brain along with the insulin that I'm going to talk about, which starts to lay down plaque and could create long-term problems. Guess what the best way to get rid of aluminum out of your body is? Drinking Fiji water. Believe it or not, Fiji water has the highest count of silica in it, and it comes right out of the ground with tons of silica, and aluminum and silica are like best friends. So when you're drinking the Fiji water, it pulls the aluminum out of your body, it chelates it out of your body. That's it. I wish it was all so easy. That's about the only one that is so easy. So I want to talk about what goes wrong with all of this stuff. Why are we having the disease, the chronic diseases, health in our country, right? So it all starts in the cell. So every live part of us is a cell. You know, we have a lot of tissue that is just connective tissue, but the real part that, you know, makes us tick is our cells. So in the cell, you have a bunch of little guys in there, and this one's called a mitochondria, and that's right now kind of the most important thing, because it's the energy producing cell in our body. So it's like when you put gas in your gas tank, that gets to somewhere in your engine, and at one point that ignites and pushes the car forward, right? So if that little igniter wasn't working well, you could have all the gas in the world, but your car wouldn't go. So this little thing called the mitochondria is like Moss Landing. It's our power plant. So inside our cell, we get nutrients into the cell, like sugar gets into that thing, makes power, and keeps us alive, and when it kicks out toxic waste, just like out of your exhaust pipe, those toxins have to get out of your body. Here's a cell. So if that's one of our human cells, and in our human cell we have one thing called the mitochondria, which is our power plant. Power plant to make energy, and then that energy has some toxic exhaust that comes out. That exhaust has to get out of our cell to keep us healthy and to move us forward. Does that make sense to y'all? So the analogy would be if I was driving down the road and I had a hose in my exhaust pipe, exhaust pouring into the cab of my car. I might be moving forward, but I don't feel very well. So if you are not feeling the energy you should, if you have chronic disease And this is an indication that you got a hose coming out of your exhaust pipe sticking into your cap. Okay? Your body cannot eliminate toxins well. And one of the things the body does when you are too toxic is it holds on to fat. Because fat is inert and it can store toxins into fat cells, and then those fat cells won't affect you. And then when you try to lose weight, your body's not going to want to burn those fat cells because it knows that you're going to be dumping toxins into your body. Kind of makes sense? So we need to figure out how to solve this problem. So what ends up happening when we have too much of this toxic overload in our body, which we saw earlier, the toxins, just like if you had poison oak, anybody ever had poison oak so bad your eyes swell shut? You know, or know somebody, or on the East Coast it's poison ivy. Well, if your eyes are swollen shut, you still have them, but you just can't use them. So what the toxins do to our cell walls is they get these walls so swollen that nothing can get in them or out of them. So this is our cell wall, and we've got you see this little hole between here? Every single hormone and every single vitamin, mineral, and any substance that has to go in and out of the cell has one door to go through, and only one. An insulin molecule can't use an estrogen door. An estrogen molecule can't use a progesterone door. So each one of these doors are specific to one hormone, vitamin, mineral, substance. So what happens when you're getting the toxins in your cell can't get out, digestive system isn't working well, our body's toxic. So it's like if I had a bucket of water and I had a sponge in it, and I kept washing the walls, but I never changed the water, pretty soon the water's so dirty the walls won't get clean anymore. So if we're not digesting, if we have problems with our digestive system, then that's what's happening. We're just constantly pushing toxins around in our body. So the cell wall gets swollen. Toxins can't get out of the cells. It starts to wipe out and damage the mitochondria, so our energy goes down. And pretty soon it will kill our mitochondria. Now we've got several in each cell. In fact, your heart cells are not 70% of your heart cells are mitochondria. That's the power plant of your heart, has to be that strong. Muscle cells are less and stomach cells are less. But what ends up happening when you get such a swollen cell wall, let's say that insulin is supposed to open the door for that sugar molecule. We all know that insulin and sugar has something in common, right? Well, pretty soon this cell wall gets so rusty that one insulin can't open the door anymore. So pretty soon your pancreas is making more and more insulin. And then what happens when your body can't make enough insulin? What do you end up doing? Getting shots of what? Insulin. More insulin. So pretty soon you're getting the medical or the pharmaceutical insulin to push that sugar in. Now it does solve a problem. It does get the sugar in the cell, but one of the biggest problems now is you've got too much insulin in your blood. It's called hyperinsulinemia, too much insulinemia in the blood, right? So now that insulin is flowing around through your bloodstream and it's going in and out of the brain. So guess what happens when you get too much insulin in your brain? What's that called? Called Alzheimer's disease. Diabetes type 3. Diabetes type 3 is too much insulin in the brain. And if you don't get rid of that insulin and it's in there too long, it lays down plaque, just like at a dentist's office, a little bit different substance, but it lays down plaque in your brain that stops the signals from synapsing, and that ends up causing dementia. Now a lot of this, if we catch it in time, can be reversed, but we have to catch it in time. So what happens is you've got your liver here, and when your blood supply brings sugar to your cells in a perfect world, sugar gets in there, makes energy, toxic waste comes out, goes to the liver, and then the liver pushes it out your body. And you just continue on with a nice clean burning machine. But when we start to get chemicals, heavy metals, and molds in our body, it breaks down the system, swells up the cells, inflames the liver and other digestive systems, inflames the brain. So I was at the flea market yesterday, just kind of checking it out, and I looked around at the average person walking down the aisles, and the quality of health is unbelievably terrible. I don't know if you ever go someplace and just check out, if you go to a marathon, everybody looks pretty healthy, right? But in general health, you just look and the people are shuffling around and, they're using walkers and canes, and some of them aren't any older than me. And I'm not that young, but, so, and this is considered normal. And this is what makes me so mad. People don't know they can be healthy. They don't know the body can heal itself. I had a patient, or actually a friend of mine, it was his son, and I ran into him. He's 36 years old, and we were talking, and he had some eczema and stuff, and he lived somewhere else, and he said, I've been really studying my body, and I cleaned my liver out, my eczema went away. He goes, you know what, I realized something. The body knows how to heal itself. And I go, and I mean, he meant it. He goes, I had no clue the body knew how to heal. But you know what, you turn on the TV, every third commercial, 3 out of 5 commercials is a drug commercial saying, tell your doctor about this, tell your doctor about this, tell your doctor about this, tell your doctor about this. And if it doesn't kill you, but we never hear the kill you thing. So that's one reason I'm doing these workshops is I want to get people aware, number one, that the body knows how to do it. It knows how to heal itself. Sometimes it's easy, but I'm telling you, when you're having trouble, we've got to get these chemicals out of the body. The heavy metals, the molds, and the biochemicals. It's really important because we're going down this path, and you just look ahead of you and see where everybody else is going. And unless you do something different, I remember this, I'm not going to do this kind of not a good thing to do online, so I won't. It's gross. It's about cattle. At any rate, so our job is to clean up. Number one, we got to clean up the digestive system. We have bugs in our digestive system, 100 trillion bacteria in our colon. You guys understand that? 100 trillion bacteria in our colon. And those guys are our friends. Let's see if I have it here. So these little bacteria, they basically digest all of our food and make nutrients. When they're healthy, that goes really well. But what happens is we wipe these guys out with chemicals. We wipe them out with antibiotics. We wipe them out with foods that are tainted with preservatives. The FDA allows over 1,300 preservatives just to go into our food. Our body doesn't know how to handle these. So what happens inside our digestive system is if these are the holes that good food is supposed to get through, or good nutrients, and this is your colon, they blow big holes. These toxins blow big holes in our digestive system that allows harmful chemicals to get into our body. And this is where we get something called leaky gut, where if these are the tight junctions of the cell, they get swollen and blown apart, and then we've got all kinds of weird bacteria that get into our body that should never be in there. We get chemicals in our body, molds, heavy metals. So this is what we've got to correct. This is what we know how to do. So one of the things that, I'm going to go back to my beautifully drawn cell here. One of the things that we want to handle is inside the cell you have your genes, right? We've got our DNA in there, and we've got all these little genes that are either good genes or bad genes. We have cancer genes and we have blue-eye genes. We've got arthritis genes and we have blonde hair genes. When you get the toxins build up in your cells, because of the cell walls are so swollen, it will start to turn on bad genes. So what we've been led to believe in our current society is if you have a bad gene turn on, then you're stuck with it. You have to take a pill for the rest of your life for that bad gene. But nobody's told us, what if we were to clean up the digestive system, clean up the cell, get the heavy metals out of our body along with the other molds and biochemicals, which we can do, so that the brain can be cleaned up, so we get this system working the way it's supposed to be, we can actually be healthy. Does that make sense to you guys? So the first thing we got to do is there's 3 different parts to this, but number one, and a lot of people think that, I can do a 30-day cleanse, or, a coffee enema, or I can do a 5-day flush of some kind. They're all good, but they're just a flash in the pan. To get your body turned around again, it takes a lifetime, because it's taken a lifetime to get us here. But it's worth it. The first few months are the dedicated, you have to dedicate to get this handled and to learn how to keep your body healthy after that. Our job is to teach you how to be healthy. Once we're done teaching you, we expect you to be able to do it for the rest of your life. But first thing we want to do is we're going to clean up this downstream environment. So we got to clean up your kidney, your large intestine, and your liver so that it can handle the toxins we're pulling out of the body. If we tried to pull the toxins out of your organs and upstream in your cells, they would just get into your large intestine and wreak havoc. And then the next thing you know, you're sicker and sicker. People have probably tried to do cleanses before and gotten real sick because there's no place for the toxins to get out of the body. So we have to have some way to absorb the toxins out of our body. And so when I met Dr. Pampa, who is the cellular healing guru of the world as far as I'm concerned, and some of the top scientists he's led us to follow, we found out how to actually get to the core of the problem and how to get the body healthy. And so one of the things we want to test and find out, well, how bad are you? How inflamed are you? When you have this cells inflamed, you've heard of free radicals, right? You've all heard about those things. Well, they show up in your urine because basically it's like if you went out to a car that's been in a parking lot or in a field and you took your hand and swept across the paint, all of that white stuff, the oxidized paint comes off of the car. Same thing with the cells. When they're toxic, they oxidize, and that shows up in your urine. And we do a test called the meta-oxy test that actually tests your urine to see how much your cells are being oxidized. So it's a really good indicator on what's breaking down. A guy named Dr. Shoemaker, who's the leading doctor on mold, and the optic nerve, have you heard of him? No. Anyway, the optic nerve is the best way to test the brain. So he found out that mold gets into the brain, but it affects the optic nerve. And by doing this visual test, we can tell whether by molds, heavy metals, and biochemicals by various things that he's been able to find. It's a good indicator of that. So, basically, what we're looking at doing is 3 steps of a program. The first step, and sometimes it will take a month, sometimes a couple months, just clean up the digestive system. And if you've got a condition there, it might take a little while to get the heavy metals in top. Your body is not going to get healthy because we can't possibly detox anything else if we're putting things that are damaged. So healing them is the first thing we do. Once those, and then finally the last step is that we get to the brain. And the brain is where the magic happens, because the pituitary gland, have you guys heard about that? The endocrine system, all of your hormones are directed up here in your brain. So, and guess what? The heavy metals love the endocrine system. They love your pituitary gland and your hypothalamus. So they're going to affect your thyroid, your adrenal glands, your reproductive hormones, and any other of those systems in your body. So as we clean up your environment and we're able to work up in this area, then your body's really going to start to heal itself. So it's a pretty cool system. One of the things that we do is test. Not everybody needs to do the heavy metal test. I wanted to do it because I had so much mercury in my mouth as a kid growing up. My I think I told this story before, but my grandma used to just take her teeth out and put them in a jar. And I was about 5 years old watching some TV show with my grandma, and my mom said, "Come on, you got to go brush your teeth." And I'm going, "No, I don't want to brush my teeth. I'm watching the show." "No, you got to brush your teeth." And then grandma just went like that. I went, "That's what I want." So I just decided at 5 years old I wasn't going to brush my teeth. The next thing I know, I have a whole mouthful of mercury. Now mercury, and I used to play with it as a kid. We'd go get it at the 5 and dime store and break it open and put that in our hands and play with it. It was pretty cool. But that stuff is a neurotoxin, and when you're exposed to it, it hides in different parts of your body. And it's going to turn on those bad genes at some point in your life. So if we can get this stuff, number one, spotted, and then get it out of our body, we can do, or, we can really help ourselves. So yeah, you guys have any questions on anything? Did this make any sense?
Did you find a bunch of mercury?
Yes. Well, my mercury level on that chart, my mercury and lead are way up in the dangerous spot. So mercury and lead together are a real dangerous combination. And you know what ended up happening is by the time I was 3 years in third grade, I had dyslexia so bad. Now, I had no idea if this is related to the mercury or not. However, a lot of people say it is.
Yeah.
That there was a blind boy in my class named John that could, and that was really depressing for me in third grade. I mean, that was traumatic. I mean, I'm glad the guy could read, but the fact that I couldn't read, he could read with his fingers and I couldn't read with my brain and my eyes, and it was really scary. So one of the things that I recommend, if you haven't already done it, is to just do the testing to find out where your toxicity level is. And Carol, do we have those things?
The what?
The testing things? Did we print them out?
They should be on the pack that I gave.
Oh, okay. So,
Is the